Welcome to A Meaningful Marketplace.
I'm Sarah Masoni from Oregon State University's Food Innovation Center, where I've helped countless dreamers launch their new food products. It's the science of taking a food delight from the kitchen to mass manufacturing and still keeping its great taste. That's what I do. I've been called the woman with the $1 million palate, although I haven't tried to cash that check yet. Listen in weekly for real-life stories.
I'm Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Hot Sauce and author of Preservation Pantry, modern canning from root to top and stem to core. I love inspiring business owners to get started on their journey, encourage folks to be part of their local community, and I'm excited to help business owners tell their stories. Hello and welcome to the Meaningful Marketplace. We are here weekly to discuss the journeys of food entrepreneurs. We're glad you've joined us today as we bring you stories of hope and inspiration. This is Sarah Marshall, owner of Marshall's Hot Sauce. Sarah Masoni is out this week, but she will be back next week. We have been partnering with the Regional Food Business Center to bring you guests from our 6-state region. We're currently meeting with business owners from the great state of Washington. I would like to welcome our co-host Emily from Washington State University. Thank you for being our Washington expert as we meet all these great new friends. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Sarah. Glad to be here. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It feels like it's been so long.
I know. It feels like we had a break, which is always nice, which it's just a holiday. Does that count as a break? I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, probably.
This is like the saddest part for me because this is actually our last show that we're recording together.
Yeah,
I'm so bummed.
The end of a brief but very special era.
I know. Well, are there any things that you've learned while we've had this time together?
Oh, that's a really good question. I've really enjoyed seeing the different paths people have taken to food businesses. I worked largely with farmers before who also all have very different paths to get to where they are. But I feel like for food businesses, it's been even more expansive and really fun to witness. I have learned that there is absolutely an art to being on a podcast. And Sarah Marshall, you were wonderful at it. I think I have had moments that are better than others, but I've really appreciated working alongside you and Sarah Masoni.
Well, I think it's been really fun. And sometimes I feel bad for our co-host because it's like you come on and, you're on for a few weeks. And I feel like right when you're really getting your stride and you're feeling confident and you're ready to just like get in there with us, then we're like, okay, bye. See you next time. And then we move on to the next stage.
Well, it sounds like there will be a next
Yes,
time.
that was the thing I was going to say is that we are continuing. We're going to meet back up with you and with Washington again. So this isn't really our end. We're just pausing for now. And then you'll be ready to roll right in there when we're going again.
And I'm very much looking forward to listening to all of the Oregon ones that we have coming up next.
Yeah. I'm super excited. It's been so fun for us to move around. And even, we originally started the show just doing Oregon. And so I'm kind of excited to circle back to our own state again, but with people that we haven't talked to before, which will be really nice. I did want to ask if you have any Washington events or things to tell us about before we go.
Yes, we do have a couple of things to know about. The first one is a webinar that's happening very soon, but it will be recorded and posted on the Colorado Building Farmers website. And that is what comes after the holidays, but tax season. It is a federal tax update geared towards agricultural taxes. So that session is designed to provide an overview of Schedule F income and expenses, cost recovery principles, tax management strategies, and more. So if you're listening to this and preparing to do your taxes, definitely would recommend that. And then the other exciting news is we have opened one of our regional business builder grants. So the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center Diverse Markets for Climate Resilient Agriculture team is offering grants between $3,000 and $50,000 that are designed to build and expand local and regional non-commodity markets for climate resilient grains, pulses, and pseudo cereals. That is open until March. And in early January, we will be opening 2 more regional grant opportunities through our Building Resilient Animal Protein Supply Chain team and through our Connecting and Scaling Food Entrepreneurs team. So keep an eye out for those in January through March. But the Business Builder grants are starting.
Very cool. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes so people can find them easily. And we would like to encourage you to connect with your state by signing up for the Regional Food Business Center newsletter. It's a breeze to sign up. Go to Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center.com, hit connect with us, and choose the button to receive newsletters. And we want to thank our sponsor for supporting the Meaningful Marketplace. Thank you for helping us spread the word about small business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's hear a word from our sponsor. The Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center is the proud sponsor of the Meaningful Marketplace podcast, giving a voice to food from across the 6-state region of Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. The Food Business Center supports Northwest and Rocky Mountain food industry makers as part of the USDA's National Network of Food Business Centers, supporting a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system as a go-to source for small and mid-tier food and farm businesses with a focus on underserved communities, providing education in the form of technical knowledge, business programs, and industry news. We sponsor trade shows, meetups, and conferences to connect growers, producers, retailers, distributors, and processors, all to stimulate business and raise the standards of our storied food industry. Join us as we travel through the 6-state region, learning more about food makers, food hubs, and food systems. Visit the website at Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Businesses.com to get connected. And I would like to introduce you to our guest, Angela Kora, owner of Ethos Bakery and Cafe, specializing in whole grain baking in Richland, Washington. We're delighted to have you on the show today, Angela. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And it's good to talk with you as well, Emily. I'm a huge podcast listener, and so it's always fun and exciting to get to be a participant/person involved in one. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course. We're so glad you're here. And we love to connect our listeners to you. Can you give us the best way for them to find you on social media and online?
Totally. Yeah. We are on Instagram primarily, and our handle is Ethos Bakery Cafe. We also have a separate Instagram account for our stone mill, which is where folks can connect with us for recipe ideas, as well as if folks are interested in purchasing our stone milled flours directly. And that one is Ethos Stone Mill. So we also have a website where you can reach out to us through email, and that's ethosbakery.net.
Perfect. We'll make sure to link those in there. And we always like to start at the beginning. So can you tell us what inspired you to start Ethos?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ethos was a conversation around kind of like what would my business partner and I do if we weren't doing our day job. So my background is actually in engineering. So I'm a scientist by training, and baking is something that I've loved since childhood, and cooking and food in particular. And my partner, his background was in all kinds of things, but logistics, politics, all kinds of stuff. And so I think for him, he was the entrepreneur, the visionary of the two of us, in the sense that he saw how much I enjoyed baking and cooking at home. And so he said, well, let's make this a thing. And in our community in the Tri-Cities in Richland at the time, which was 2010, 2011, there really wasn't much in the way of from scratch bakeries, much less that idea of like farm to table cooking. And I grew up in Portland. And so that to me was just kind of inherent of like, of course you want to get things that are made by producers in your region. But folks in our community just didn't really know what that looked like. And the coffee shop where Scott and I met, actually, they were selling Costco muffins. And so it was that idea of like, oh, we could work with a local bakery that makes things from scratch, was kind of revolutionary. So yeah, it was that idea of we were both kind of looking for more in our day-to-day jobs, something that felt more impactful in what we were doing. I loved the theory of what I did, which was getting to work in energy efficiency and sustainability and things like that as an engineer, but it was definitely lacking in the day-to-day sort of like getting to work with people more directly and getting to see like a tangible output of what I did every day. So, and I think for us too, Ethos was really about building community in a region and a community where we're kind of very suburban in feel. We don't really have a lot of like an urban core. And when I moved here in 2009, there wasn't like, I moved with a lot of young people who or started in my job with a lot of other younger engineers, but we were all looking for a place to gather or a place to just meet other people outside of work. And there wasn't a lot of that in this area. There was, again, at that time, coffee culture wasn't as common. And so, we've seen a big shift and a change since then, but we really wanted to be a community gathering place for people where, we live in a fairly politically diverse region and community. And so even though people may have different belief systems, they could connect together over something that we all have to do, which is eat. And so that for us was something that we really wanted to bring by starting Ethos.
I love those, of course, all of the things you're saying I love, but I love the idea of having a space for people to come together. And did you start with that space? Because sometimes when we hear from makers, they start at the farmer's market, but you maybe started with a brick and mortar, and that seems a little bit different journey.
Totally. Yeah, we were, and that's a great point. When we were looking at different ideas and options at the time, this was before even cottage bakery laws were allowed in Washington state. So I think those came more like maybe 2012. And so it was right on that cusp, but so it wasn't really an option for us to start something like out of a home. There were some commercial kitchens, but they weren't really convenient, and just the logistics of that seemed a little daunting to me personally. And so we were just kind of brainstorming different ideas, and we came across a building that was an incubator suite. So we worked with our local Port of Benton, and they had just purchased this building from the local WSU community. And so it was one of those like perfect timing where we were able to find a space, like you said, that's not common to start out in a commercial space from day one. But we were fortunate to get to work with some great partners where, their whole point of, existence is to help small business to develop. And so we stayed in that facility for the first probably, 6 years, I want to say, before spreading out and trying different locations and different things until we've landed where we are now.
And for people that are listening out there that are thinking about opening a space, a community space, serving food and baked goods, what kinds of lessons have you learned in opening an actual bakery?
Yeah, there's so many things. I think for me personally, something that was important for me to learn was to remember, like, to meet our community where they're at. Again, like at the time we opened in 2011, we had to be careful that we weren't presenting something that was too foreign to our customers. We have a lot of customers who it felt like when they were walking into the bakery that it was like walking into home, especially if they're from Europe or from urban communities and things like that. But there's a lot of people even now who, they are unfamiliar with some of the more European style pastries or breads, and like even pronouncing things that they don't know how to pronounce feels uncomfortable, And so I think really trying to make things more approachable to folks and say like, well, what flavors do you like, or what texture, or, what's another pastry that you are familiar with, and I can help describe something that is what you're looking for. And so I think that has been something that has been a good lesson for me, is to just, what I think that I want to make may not be what the customer is ready for. And so kind of taking them along that journey and like being open to their input, even to say, hey, I like this rye bread. And this is a thing. We had a customer who's from Germany, and he's like, I really like your rye bread, but can you not put caraway in it? Because it's like too strong of a flavor for me. I'm used to just being like the true rye. So we're like, okay, sure. And so we stopped putting caraway in it, and we do a different variety that has caraway in it. So that way folks can still get that if they're looking for that more traditional flavor. But then he gets to feel like he provided input on what we developed as a result as well. So I think that's been something that's been a really important thing as we've grown and changed, and recognizing that we are kind of a unique business in our area. And so, in order to continue to grow and also to help make people want to be part of what we're doing, like to help them feel comfortable. And again, to make it something that's approachable and just not so foreign that they feel like put off and they don't want to come back. Because it's really about like once you try it and taste it, that people get excited and want to come back. So,
Emily, do you have questions?
Yeah, I love hearing how you're thinking so much about the customer. I feel like that is so crucial, but really making it accessible to everybody. I love that lesson and takeaway. So you mentioned a lot that coffee culture has changed, and I also in the last decade we've seen so much of our nation's relationship with locally sourced food and kind of more artisan food change. And have you seen that culture change at all in the Tri-Cities alongside your path as a business, or what does that look like now?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think we've seen a shift, which is exciting. I think we got to be part of this grassroots movement, both in the coffee world, but also in the more like artisan grains and local grains and this idea of a regional grain economy type of thing. And so I think Tri-Cities tends to be, 5 to 10 years behind some of the trends as they come out, but we're starting to see that appreciation and value prevalent more so in Tri-Cities as well. And just seeing other businesses that have opened, like other coffee shops and other bakeries and other food establishments as well, who are becoming wholesale customers of ours. And so that is another way that it's been really like exciting to see more people resonate with those values of knowing where your food comes from, knowing, or appreciating the value in a well-crafted cup of coffee. And I do think that something that's been true in this community for many decades is there's a lot of pride in the agricultural roots that our community has. And agriculture goes way back. We're in the Columbia Basin where there's a lot of fertile ground, and so there is this history and this lifestyle of farming and agronomy in this community. And so I think for us, again, that's another perspective that we try to lead with, which is that like this is grain that we buy from a farm that is just 30 minutes away or 2 hours away. It's it's within our region. And I think for folks who really value what it means to be a farmer and the hard work that goes into that, I think they appreciate that we're also doing what we can to create those connections and keep that that product and those foods in our region instead of having them all shipped somewhere else.
And I would love to hear more about freshly milled grain and the availability of that to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out since the very beginning, fresh milling our whole grains on site. And that was something that I learned about through a baker friend I had before we started Ethos. And she had a little tabletop mill, and she was part of like a local slow food group that I was in. And when I tasted products or things that she baked with her fresh milled flour, it was just like, whoa, this is just a night and day experience. For me, it's about the flavor that a fresh milled flour product brings to what you're making. I think of the analogy of like fresh milled coffee or fresh ground coffee compared to coffee that's been ground, however many weeks or months ago. It's just, you can't even compare. And then when you see it in like different bread products in particular, and the activity that your sourdoughs and your different leavened products have as a result, it's just wild to me. And then to see how when we first started, and we worked with a local farm to buy grain that we could then mill into flour, there wasn't as much information or knowledge around like different varieties of grain. And so we purchased like one variety of hard red wheat. And, I wasn't sure if it was bread or pastry filler. I just knew it was whole wheat, used it in products. And at the time, I think our customers weren't as familiar with a whole grain product. I didn't know how to work with whole grains as much either. And so we had to, again, adjust our products to be a little more crowd friendly and had to dial back the whole grain content. And over time, and as we were able to upgrade our mill to a different kind that's able to produce a more fine flour, that just enhanced the quality of our products and then also made us able to retail our fresh milled flour to customers. And so that was kind of only about 4 years ago, which was a result of the pandemic, really, where we were able to use some of our pandemic funding to upgrade our mill to something that just produced, again, it was like a night and day experience for me of like, oh my gosh, like you can do this with whole grains once they're milled this way. And then also as we started working with different farms and learning more about different heritage varieties or just different varieties in general and how certain varieties are better for pastry applications or for different flavor components or, even different colors that you might want in your final product, and learning more about the work that's being done at WSU and just different entities across the Northwest, but really across the globe has been, again, it's like being part of this grassroots movement that is just really exciting. And customers, I think it's taken them a little while to get to understand and appreciate and value what fresh milled grain and fresh milled flour means. But even this holiday season, we've seen an uptick in our retail bags that are getting purchased as customers walk into our bakery. They're able to purchase our retail flour. You can purchase our fresh milled flour online, and so we've seen those orders increase as well. And just this past year, we had an expansion where we were able to use some WSU grant money to, again, upgrade our mill, help with expanding into a larger facility. And our hope is to be able to expand into more wholesale accounts, as well as potentially working with some schools in the future to just further that Washington grain and get people excited about whole grains and fresh milled flours.
That's so exciting. It makes me really want to try the difference, because I think when you use the coffee description, it really makes me feel like I understand it a little more. And I think that I can tell the difference, but I'm not for sure. I have to taste it myself, so I'm going to do it.
Yes, please do. I remember the story my friend tells me the first time she tried it. She was at a bakery somewhere in Portland, I think. And at the time they were fresh milling grains. And this was probably like 15 or 20 years ago now. And I don't remember what bakery it was, but she said, she asked the person, like, why does your bread just taste so good? And they're like, let me show you. And they brought her in the back and like plunged her hands into this bin of fresh milled flour where it's still warm and the aroma is just, you feel like you're in a field of hay somewhere. And she was just like, I was changed. So that's a fun story to tell. But also that fresh milled aspect, there's more study and more research being done on like nutritional benefits from that too. But then of course the stone milling aspect as well, where you're crushing the grain between two stones instead of a roller mill process where you're kind of shaving the outer layers of the grain off. And so you don't release the same oils and the same components into the flour. And so that's why, whole grain roller milled flour is different than whole grain stone milled flour, because that process just releases different compounds and different components that come out in the final flour product.
That makes sense. We have a spice company at the farmers market, and they do all their spices with stone ground. So I've heard them talk about the same reasons before, but I didn't really think about it with flour. That would be the same thing. We're going to take a quick break, and Emily will bring us back with some questions. So we'll be right back.
Oregon State University's College of Agricultural Sciences and the Food Innovation Center are proud sponsors of Meaningful Marketplace. With a mission to serve all Oregonians, we are committed to giving voice to those whose food and agricultural stories are not always heard. By providing access and opportunity for a more diverse and just food system, because food brings people together.
All right, well, welcome back. So we just learned a little bit about how the different milling processes result in such a different flour product. And Angela, I noticed on your website that Ethos offers some workshops. So can you tell me a little bit about how those workshops began, and are those focused on getting your community more comfortable with utilizing those fresh milled flours in their homes?
Yeah, great question. The workshops are a lot of fun, for sure. And we started workshops and classes probably like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. As at the time, it was honestly more about like a different revenue stream, especially in the winter months where your retail starts to drop off and you're looking for other things to maintain a more even revenue stream. So we started out with macaron classes of all things. And it really, I think, the original motivation beyond revenue building was also a way to bring people together again and do an activity around something that people had an interest with. And so kind of seeing how much people resonated with that idea of coming together and learning about something food related that was hands-on was great. These classes would sell out every time. And so that was right before the pandemic, I think. So like 2018, 2019. And so then, of course, it was like, okay, well, we're not going to be doing some gathering for a little while. But then as we expanded our milling operation, and again, we're looking for both additional revenue streams and then also engaging with some of our team at that time. So some of our bakers that were on the team were really interested in education, and they really helped push me into bringing these things back onto our to-do list, more or less, of things that we did as a company. And so it was kind of a project that those bakers could really help to spearhead, to say, okay, let's develop some ideas around this. And again, that was around the time that we were really expanding our fresh milled flour and our retail flour. So like you said, it was an opportunity to really help get people comfortable with this product that maybe was totally unfamiliar to them, and to build some awareness around the benefits of whole grain flour, how to use it in your home kitchen, because it is different. There really was that two-pronged motivation of the interest and skills of our team at the time, and then also building awareness of the flour and the product that we offer. And then kind of since then, I think an additional component that's been really interesting, and I've talked with some baker friends about this as well, is that idea of, I feel like our culture these days, instead of gathering for the purpose of just gathering, like going to a restaurant or going out to a pub or something like that, it's less common. We don't see that as much now. And so it's almost like people want a reason or a facilitated activity to allow them to gather and to do something with a friend, or even do something to get to meet people that they haven't met before. And it's a lot less intimidating to have something that you can sign up for and say, like, I want to do that, as an opportunity to get to meet people in our community. So we just hosted a cookie swap around the holidays, and with the idea of it being like, okay, this is an opportunity to get to meet strangers that you don't know. And yes, even feed them food that you don't know if it's going to make you sick or not. But of course it didn't. But to get to meet people with a similar interest. And again, that idea of building community around something that can help to have a focused activity to help people to feel more comfortable with each other. And that's been, I think, an interesting trend to see more of those educational sort of activities popping up, not just in baking, but in other food and in other like crafts and arts and things like that as well. So it's a little bit less related, but still interesting to see, how for us, again, it's about how do we create a space for people to learn about our products, build awareness about why they're delicious and fun to work with, and also build community again. And I've had some friends who've had similar experiences with hosting classes where they'll say it also helps the average person understand more of the level of work that goes into doing what we do. And so like they'll say, like, I love that I get to learn how to make macaron or scones or whatever it is that we're doing. And also I will very much value coming and buying them from you every week, because I know how much work goes into doing that now. And I'm more appreciative of what that effort looks like.
Yeah, I once took a class here at Cookshop on how to do like laminate dough. So it was like doing like croissants and things like that. And I would say almost everybody in the class was like, this makes it so that I totally understand and would pay even more money when I buy that croissant from you at the farmer's market, because it was a person that was selling them, at the market. And it
Right.
really does do that. Like, it was such a fun experience. It was fun for us to all be there and make it, but it was so hard. And It was a lot of work, and it was a very interesting learning process, but I don't know that anyone would do that regularly for themselves. It's very hard.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also a value in that, especially for people in the baking industry who we aren't always the best at like sharing what level of work goes into what we do. And when, like you said, when people look at the price tag, sometimes they're a little unsure as to why this thing they should be paying so much more for it. But one of our old baristas said it well once when somebody mentioned that, and she just said, "Well, it's worth it."
Yeah.
And so you're like, "Yep,
That's it.
that's true."
Sometimes it is that simple.
Yeah. Are there things that you started out making when you started the bakery that you still make? And what have you added to the things that you bring to the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out pretty simple with just like scones and muffins and some pretty basic quick breads. And we still do the scones for sure. And that's something that people love, especially the different flavor varieties that we change up seasonally. We've changed the recipe a little bit over time, added a little bit more whole grain. And so that's, kind of you sneak it in a little bit at a time. So we started out pretty basic with that. And we started out with a wood-fired oven. And so we actually were doing wood-fired pizzas in our first location, which was partially because we were next door to a brewery. So that partnership worked really well. So while we don't have that wood-fired oven because we're not in that facility any longer, that really allowed us to, again, because we started in a fairly low risk space, relatively speaking, we grew over time. So within the first year, we added in breads, and then we added in laminated products, and then we added in other things. And a lot of that was really based around other employees that joined the team, and they added different things and different ideas, and some worked, some didn't. So I think a lot of what we've done over the years has been a reflection of the team that we've had at the time and kind of giving them an opportunity to provide creative input. And, at one point we had a full scale restaurant, and that was around the chef and the team that we had built up at that time. And it was great for me to learn because I had never really had that experience of what it was like to work to make that kind of high-end food. And so while we haven't kept that aspect of the full-scale restaurant over the years, we still maintain sandwiches and some of our, quick savory menu and things like that. And we've added in different cold case items, so we don't do them right now, but we've done like a full eclair line over the years, or like layered cakes and things like that. And I think a lot of it for us has been learning what works and what doesn't. And I think figuring out how to right size our product line so that we're not so diverse that it's hard to manage. And yet we have enough diversity where people can appreciate what it is that we're doing, and they can have something different every time they come in. So we definitely have maintained our laminated product line over the years and have tried to refine it as we can. We've grown our bread program quite a bit also, which has been, for me, really satisfying. The bread is kind of where my heart's at, more so. And so I think those have become more of our pillars, especially as we've been looking to expand wholesale a little bit more. And then I think, learned that the full scale restaurant side of things is a whole nother animal. And so we kind of backed away from that and kind of focused more and honed in on that cafe bakery concept as something that was more manageable for what we do. And from both an employee perspective and from a like diverse systems perspective. But also, again, I think it's that balance of having enough product lines where you can reflect different seasons of the year and maintain an even revenue stream over the year. And so what does well in the summer versus what does well in the winter, so we have some summer products that are like cold pressed juices. We added that product line in as something that goes well in the cafe environment and also has a good summertime footprint and things like that. So yeah, we've definitely done a lot of trial and error over the years, I'd say.
What item do you think tells your story best?
Ooh, it's a great question. I think possibly the first thing that came to mind was our baguette. probably. So that was a formula that I learned at a baking class I went to in Maine, which is where we had procured our wood-fired oven back in the day. And so it's based on a formula that we did at that baking class, which was a little tiny like baking school that somebody had on their farm. And it was just this idyllic experience. And there's a whole story around it. But that formula is one that we maintain, and it was the base for our pizza dough when we did pizzas, and then it turned into our baguette, and then that baguette has been something that's just kind of been stable throughout our years. I would say I would like to make it a probably more whole grain centric baguette. It doesn't have a whole lot of whole grains at the moment, but it is one of those items that I think because of where it started is one that I think of as a core product for us. I don't know if it's so much telling our story as it is just something that's been a mainstay. And we do include a little bit of our starter in the dough, which isn't as like traditional for baguette, but it's an Ethos baguette for that reason. And one of the things that I love is we have a customer who's French, and she'll get baguettes every week. And like the highest praise, I think, is when she's like, your baguettes are as good, if not better, than the ones I've had in France. And so that's very special.
Emily, do you have any final questions for Angela before we go?
Yeah, I would love to know in the time we have left a little bit more about how you got connected with the farmers that you partner with, and how you might recommend to other listeners who are interested in sourcing ingredients more locally, like what first step they might take in their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first farm we worked with was the Parrott family, and they were someone we found by, again, Scott, my business partner. He had called up the Washington Grain Commission and was like, we want to work with a farm and buy grain from them. And they said, oh, no one's asked to do that before. And so they gave us a list of names. I think there was not very many people on it, just because, especially at that time, working directly with a farm in our area was kind of unheard of, just because they're so used to large scale. So we worked with them for our first couple years, and the amount of grain we purchased was like more than we needed for like our first like 3 to 4 years of operation. And that's something we also learned, was how much we actually were going through at that time. So that was the first farm we worked with. And then probably in 2015 or so, when we had our full scale restaurant, we just had a gentleman who walked in the door and said, hey, my name's Dick Sharman, and I hear you guys mill your grain. And so that was how we met the Sharmans, and they are the owners of Palouse Heritage, which is in Coville, or I think it's Coville. I should know this. But so they reached out to us because they heard that we milled grain on site. They were looking for, they have a location in Spokane called the Grain Shed, but at the time they didn't have the grain shed yet, and they were kind of building their business and looking for people in Southeastern Washington who were interested in sourcing heritage grains from them. Through Dick, we started milling and working with their grains, and then they introduced us to the Moon family, which is in Prosser and Horsehaven Hills. And I think that Dick and the Moons had met at Cascadia Grains, one of the Northwest Grain conferences here. And so through the Moons, that's our other primary farm partnership that we've developed. So it really was by word of mouth at the time. But I think since then, we've had other opportunities to work with farms. And I'm just kind of thinking about how we all connected. And I think it really tends to be word of mouth. There's a farm that grows Durham. And so that was someone that the Moons introduced me to. And I think especially in our region, a lot of the farms know each other. And so I think if they hear that there's a bakery or there's a mill that's interested in working with local grains, then they've reached out to us. And that's been, really easy, I guess. But I guess for other people who are looking to work with other farms or mills or things like that, going to WSU Mount Vernon is such a great resource in terms of different entities that they have collaborated with over the years. There's also really great, I have to think of some of there's different websites that are resources for where to find local grain in your communities. There's different books that I've used as inspiration for who to reach out to. And I think entities now that exist like Cascadia Grains or again the Northwest Coalition, there's so many more entities and structures that are available to help provide information if you just do a little bit of Googling, honestly. And I think what I love about the baking and whole grain world and this idea of a regional grain economy is people are very welcoming. The idea that you want to work with their products, it feels less intimidating potentially than other industries where it might be more competitive and like, a little bit more cutthroat. It's like at this moment of time, at least, it seems very all inclusive, where it's that idea of like, oh, you want to do this thing that we're also trying to do? Great. How can we do it together? And how can we build momentum and just get more people engaged and more people excited about what we do? And so I think that feels unique, at least in our culture these days, to be involved in an industry where it does feel like we're all trying to support each other and lift each other up versus being like uber competitive about things. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And as you said earlier, I love that collaboration within the food system. Like we all have to eat. So it's a great opportunity for collaboration.
Totally.
Well, and we always want to send people to you directly. So if people live in your area, can you tell them where to go? And then if they don't live in your area, what can they do to get your products?
Absolutely. So yeah, we have 2 locations in Tri-Cities. Our headquarters or like our bakery operations is our newest facility, and that opened off of Queensgate and Keene Road. So we're very near where our old location used to be. And this facility, we've been in the building for about 6 months. We're kind of tucked away on the back side of Keene Road, but we're right there next to there's a little gas station that's on the corner. So that's how people can find us at that location. And then we also have a location in Central Richland, which is in the Parkway, and we're right across the street from Howard Ammon Park. And that's a little smaller space that we still have all of our products available. And it's more of like the closest the Tri-Cities gets to like a walkable downtown area. So they're both different feel, a different vibe for sure. Our Queensgate location has a drive-through, and the Parkway location is a little bit more cozy, like a European style cafe would be. And then if you're not in Tri-Cities, you can purchase our freshly milled flours through our website. So that's ethosbakery.net, which you can find our stone mill area where you can purchase our products. And that's the primary thing that we have available that you can buy online right now, but we hope to expand and have some other options available as we look to expand our wholesale offerings and more options for online purchases.
Awesome. Well, Angela, it was great to hear you and hear your story. And thank you for your dedication to local farms and milling and grains. And thanks for teaching us about all those things today. It was great to chat with you.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate being part of this and getting to share a little bit more about what we do.
And Emily, I hope that you are back with us when we come back around to Washington. But otherwise, I'm glad that we've connected over this time, and I'm sure I will see you again soon.
Absolutely. You know that I'll be back to you as soon as I run out of the hot sauce that I have. I've really appreciated this opportunity. And Angela, thank you so much. This was a wonderful note to end on.
Thanks, Emily. Always a good time to chat with you.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Thank you for listening to The Meaningful Marketplace. Before you go, make sure to show some love for our show by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or you can follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Meaningful Marketplace Podcast. You can call or text Sarah and I with questions at 503-395-8858. And we couldn't do this without our team at Joy of Creation Production. Thank you to our production coordinator, Kayleen, and Haley, our audio engineer. And we'll be back next week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye.